Cox is joining us from New York City tonight. Thanks very much, Chairman, for your time, as always.
Always good to be with you, Liz.
So you are launching this unity campaign. You finally have a ticket. It is actually set.
The primary here, under the way things work here in New York, the convention is just one nodal point to the final decision, which was on December 14th, when Republicans turned out overwhelmingly. Almost 500,000 Republicans turned out and overwhelmingly nominated Carl Paladino to be our gubernatorial candidate.
So now you have this bus tour, and you are talking about moving forward in unity. The only problem is that you've got these two statewide candidates who are not backing Carl Paladino. That would be Harry Wilson and, of course, Dan Donovan, the state comptroller and AG candidates. Harry Wilson has actually said some very nice things about Andrew Cuomo. Dan Donovan is saying nothing about anyone, saying because he's DA he cannot endorse anyone. You said you expect them to be campaigning together and going forward and working together. How do those two statements relate?
Yeah, the statements that you mentioned about Andrew Cuomo by Harry Wilson are fairly old. I talked to Harry after that. That he did not mean in any way to be endorsing what Andrew Cuomo. He needs to get together with Carl. They've both been busy running their own campaigns. They will get together. I'm sure they will be campaigning together. With Dan Donovan, as you mentioned, the district attorney's code of ethics forbids a sitting district attorney, which he is in Staten Island, from endorsing any candidate.
So you're saying that you think that Harry Wilson needs to meet with Carl Paladino and then the two of them need to get on the same page?
I think, no, it's not being on the page. They just have to meet and talk in order for the mutual support to be there.
Well, the reason why this is sort of an issue is because you've got the Democrats coming out swinging, calling Carl Paladino too extreme. And in fact, today, NARAL Pro-Choice New York, which is an abortion rights group, came out and said that this is the most pro-life Republican ticket in the state history. What do you say about that statement?
That's because all these folk on our ticket are people of principle. And they are people of principle on the most important things that the people of New York State care about. Carl Paladino is a real fiscal conservative. When he says he's going to cut the state budget spending by 20%, he means it. And he's gone through the potential cuts with me. I know he means it. He knows how he's going to do it. He's going to cut taxes by 10% so he grow the economy and bring jobs back to New York. When Dan Donovan is also a man of principle, he is going to be the Attorney General, not just to use it as a stepping stone to the governorship, which Eliot Spitzer and Andrew Cuomo did. He has said, I'm not going to run for governor. I don't want to do that. I just am taking this job to be Attorney General so I can clean up the Democratic culture of corruption in Albany. People of principle doing the job they're supposed to do. That's what the voters in New York State want.
Okay, but first of all, Eric Schneiderman, who's the Democratic nominee for AG, has also said that he doesn't want to run for governor either. So that kind of takes that argument off the table. However...
Oh, no, it doesn't. No, Liz, you're wrong.
So when he says that he doesn't run for governor, that's not sufficient for you?
Yeah, but he's just saying it. But do you believe it? What is he? He is a politician who has never prosecuted anyone in his life. He served in the legislature. As far as he's concerned, the Attorney General, no matter what he says, is just a stepping stone. Otherwise, he wouldn't take the job. He just sees it what it is, AG, aspiring governor.
But okay, along that same line then, do you believe it when Dan Donovan says, well, yes, it's true, I'm personally pro-life, with the exception of rape and incest, which we'll get to in a minute, but yet I will uphold the law of New York if I become Attorney General and defend the law, which is, of course, allows abortion within certain limits. You believe Dan Donovan when he says that?
Look, look. Dan Donovan was trained by District Attorney Morgenthau here in New York. For 8 years, he served in that office, a professional prosecutor. He then ran to be the district attorney of Staten Island because he was just disgusted with the way that office was working. It was one of the worst DA's offices in New York State. He won that election. He's been DA for 7 years, and he's made it one of the best offices in New York State that can handle the diversity. Brought in an Hispanic section to it so they can handle the diversity that has to be dealt with in Staten Island now. He's got one of the best conviction rates, and he's very proud of that. He's a real professional prosecutor, and that's what we need as Attorney General. And the one thing he wants to do, he's made it clear, is the cleanup the culture of corruption in Albany, and he's going to do it without fear
Chairman.
or favor. And he has not been in the political arena just kind of doing the things in the legislature that Eric Schneiderman's been doing. He's a real prosecutor, and that's his history.
I understand your argument, and I hear what you're saying. I'm just curious
and
why
it's got nothing to do with what with pro-life, pro-choice of this. Look at his history. Look at his record. It tells you what he's going to do when he's the next Attorney General of the state of New York.
I'm just curious why you would believe what one candidate says and not believe what the other says, even though, unless it's just a case of that one's a Republican and so are you, and one's a Democrat and you are not.
Look, Liz, look at their background. Eric Schneiderman has been nothing but a legislator, a politician, dealing in a lot of different issues in a lot of different ways in Albany. Dan Donovan has been nothing but a prosecutor for his entire career, and he frankly, when I first talked to him, he didn't want to take the job. He was very comfortable being a very professional prosecutor in what he had built up to be a great office, just like his hero Morgenthau was the DA's office here. He could have kept doing that in Staten Island, in his home county. He has to take a $40,000 pay cut to be Attorney General. He's 10 minutes from his home now. He's going to have to be far from his home in Albany in order to do the Attorney General's job. He is just disgusted with the democratic culture of corruption in Albany. Let me say generally, the culture of corruption in Albany. And he's going to clean it up without fear or favor and not run for governor and go back home when he finishes his job.
Okay, so when the Democrats try and paint your entire ticket as too extreme and choice, but Carl Palladino, the standard bearer, the gubernatorial candidate particularly, as too extreme, Andrew Cuomo now, as you said, out of the Rose Garden saying these things, in a Democrat-dominated state, are you not concerned that that's going to be difficult for Republican candidates to win if they're branded as too far to the right?
Yeah. This year, with respect to fiscal issues, you cannot be too far to the right.
But we're not talking about fiscal issues.
The big issue, that's the issue that the people of New York State are concerned with. Every poll, it's a question of how are you going to close the fiscal gap, $15 billion budget gap that the next governor is going to have to face. The people of New York State they feel their jobs are threatened. They know the value of their houses has gone down. The value of their investments, their 401ks have gone down, but the principal of the mortgages have not gone down. They are saving more. They are spending less to close their budget deficits. Now, why have the last four Democratic budgets, the Spitzer-Patterson budgets, every one of them increased spending, increased taxes, increased fees, increased taxes on them?
Well,
People in
Chairman,
New York State at the time when we were going into the Great Recession and people were getting hurt here in New York.
But
people in New York State want someone who's going to cut spending, not increase taxes.
Chairman,
and they know Carl Palladino is going to do that.
In order for some of those budgets to get passed, Republicans in the legislature, particularly in the Senate, needed to vote yes. Now, not in the recent budget. I know that they were voting in blocks against the budget most recently, but in some of those early budgets that you're talking about in the Spitzer administration, there were Republican votes to help pass that. Does that not say that Republicans were part of the problem?
That's why Republicans went into the minority. But, you know, when you go into the minority and you're in the wilderness, and when you come back, you understand things the way you should. They, just like when Ronald Reagan became President of the United States, he carried the Senate with him. Carl Palladino is going to carry a Republican Senate with him, and that Republican Senate is going to be very fiscally conservative, as it was way back when Governor Pataki did exactly this in the mid-90s when he cut spending and cut taxes. Carl Palladino, supported by a Republican majority in the state Senate, is going to do that and make New York State, once again, bringing back jobs to New York, make it the state of opportunity and the land of opportunity. That's what he wants to do.
Chairman, you know, one of the things that Andrew Cuomo said when he has come out against Carl Palladino is that his platform in calling for cuts, particularly when it comes to Medicaid, is, again, that word, too extreme. And he says if, in fact, the cuts were that drastic, there would be thousands of nursing homes and hundreds of hospitals that would be forced to close. Do you believe that's what New Yorkers actually want?
At the moment, we have a very extreme Medicaid budget. It is much more liberal even than California's very liberal budget. If we just cut back to California's, we could cut $20 billion out of the state budget. That's what needs to be done. And it can be done because there are a lot of excesses in that program. Back in March, when I first met Carl Palladino, he had a list of things. These are frivolous things in that budget that can be cut back without doing any real harm to the recipients of that Medicaid assistance. And that he intends to do it. He knows what he needs to do. He will get it done, cutting Medicaid as part of balancing the state budget by cutting spending, not by raising taxes.
Now, Chairman, you've launched this new ad campaign the Republican Party has. I just want to take a listen to it, if you don't mind.
Albany is broken. One-party rule has brought New York to the brink of bankruptcy. The highest taxes in the country, families and jobs forced to leave, a state government that's a national embarrassment. Democrat leaders in Albany are destroying the promise of New York. Their solution? More of the same. It's time for a new direction. Lower taxes, less spending, more jobs. It's time to take back New York and save our state before it's too late.
Okay, so that ad is pretty self-explanatory, except for one thing. Two, actually. A, you don't mention Carl Palladino, and B, you don't mention Republicans. Where are the Republicans?
It's there. It's paid for by the Republican State Committee.
But what about the Republican candidates? Where are they?
We are talking about all our candidates. And we put that cable ad out, and it's going to run from, touch millions of viewers, running from up in the North Country all the way down to Suffolk County. And the object of that, before the candidates start putting their ads out in earnest in the last several weeks of the campaign, this is to prepare the way for their ads as individuals, for our Carl Palladino as a gubernatorial candidate, for Dan Donovan, Attorney General candidate, for Harry Wilson, Comptroller candidate, Joe DiAguardia, of course, who is running for the U.S. Senate, and also for Jay Townsend. They'll all be running their own ads. This prepares the way for those ads.
And I just want to, in parting, ask you one more thing about that bus. You know, that bus has a license plate that is not from New York. Actually, it's from Tennessee. So
that's where we could.
That's where you could find the bus.
That's where we could find the lowest cost, best bus we could get. Let me tell you, when Carl Palladino is governor and after he gets jobs coming back to this state and small business started again, that bus is going to have New York State license plates on it.
Okay, Chairman, well, we're going to hold you to that. In the meantime, I want to thank you very much for coming to spend some time with us. It's always good to see you, Ed Cox.
Good to talk to you, Liz.
Thank you, Chairman.